Okay, we are here to explore the incredible oscillator found on the Pittsburgh Modular Taiga. These oscillators are special. They are unlike oscillators I've experienced on other synths, especially analog synths. They are analog oscillators, but they have functions that analog oscillators typically don't have, that give them character that you want. If you are an analog enthusiast, these oscillators are something you want. And initially, okay, so we're listening to oscillator 1 right off the bat, and I just have it set to a sawtooth. There is a character to that already. Nothing is happening, and already that is a big, warm, analog sounding sawtooth. And I know you've probably heard a billion sawtooths, as have I, as you might know. And usually sawtooths are sawtooths for even me, but this is different. And I'm going to explain why that probably is. Although I don't have an oscilloscope, it would be really probably pretty beneficial for what I'm doing if I did, but I don't. It just sounds like I want a sawtooth oscillator to sound. And that's because there is a lot going on inside these oscillators. Okay, so let's just dig right into it. Basically, there are 4 wave shapers that exist in this oscillator. There's the core that is generating a sawtooth, and then there are 4 wave shapers that are altering the sound. And probably, if we were to look at this on an oscilloscope right now, it may not be a sawtooth, because the oscillators start with the shapes that we know, like the sine wave and the triangle and the sawtooth and the square. But they then go through these wave shapers that actually alter the shape of those waves, making them into some other shape that is different from what we would consider that shape, even though this obviously sounds like a sawtooth. So it's in the region of the sawtooth. It's a sawtooth timbre, I guess. But really, ultimately, and I've seen a lot of wave shapes coming out of synthesizers, including things like the Mini Moog. You are not getting what you expect out of these vintage analog synths. And I think that is one of the characteristics that makes them desirable to our ears. All of the great analog synth inventors started off with these wave shapes and then let them be something that sounded good. Bob did it. And a number of other people, they would take what it started with and then made sure it sounded like something pretty or desirable, because a straight sawtooth wave, I'm sorry to break this to so many synth designers, it doesn't have any character at all. It's like a buzzer sound. But this is not a buzzer sound. This is a pretty sound. It's a sound that sounds good to begin with. Of course, I will say, if you're a person that's doing the most pure form of synthesis, and synthesis alone is your goal, sure, you may want to start off with, pure waveforms that are as precise as possible. But honestly, even so, you're still getting there with your ear. So, character may not be your thing if you're a pure synthesist, but as a musician who uses a synthesizer, character is hugely important for me. As an analog enthusiast, character is hugely important for me. And what I'm trying to say is that this unique architecture has character in abundance right off the bat. Okay, so these oscillators are, as you might expect, volt per octave. And we can just start going into function right away. Right here at the top, we have pitch. So on oscillator 1, which is what we're listening to, the pitch knob is actually a fine tune that goes about a whole step in either direction. And the reason why is because, as you can tell from this light that's on right here, right now I am controlling the Taiga with a MIDI keyboard. and the MIDI keyboard is defining the pitch. So when it's in this mode where MIDI is defining the pitch, then oscillator 1, its pitch knob is going to be basically just giving you a fine tune so that you can tune up with your other instruments, because you're getting a MIDI pitch, and MIDI is pretty straightforward in regard to what frequencies are supposed to be. But if you move on to oscillator 2, which we're going to do right now, just real quick, oscillator 2 has a pitch knob that has a different function. You'll notice right now oscillator 2 is in, again, the MIDI mode, so it's being controlled by MIDI. So let's have a listen. It's not exact, obviously, but it's somewhere in the region of an octave, I'm told. Oh, it's more than an octave. It's like an octave and a minor third, at least on the top there. So, okay, you have a bit more range to work with, and that's so if, for example, you want to do tuning like that with your MIDI input, you can do it. And oscillator 3, which currently is oscillator 3, we have the same sort of situation, but oscillator 3 has about 2 octaves. So more than 2 octaves in each direction. So then if you wanted to have them all together, of course, you could have a whole spread of frequencies. So, just so you know, that is how the tuning knob operates when you're in the mode where the oscillator is controlled via MIDI like it currently is. But of course, you can turn off the MIDI and by holding down the seed button and pressing edit. Oops. And then all of a sudden we have a new situation. The pitch knob operates completely differently. To the left, right now you're just hearing clicks. We're kind of in the low frequency mode, so those clicks are the top of the wave shape. So we are in a low frequency mode where this oscillator can be used as a low frequency oscillator. And then once that's to the left of center, to the right of center, we get up into audible frequencies. And of course they're fixed because we're no longer controlled by MIDI. And so you could use that as a steady periodic waveform output, or control it via some other function. But that's basically how it operates when it's not in MIDI mode. And all three operate in that exact way. So that's how the tuning knob works in regard to the oscillators. We got away from the sawtooth I was using.